Hey, welcome back to this YouTube channel. My name is Salvador Briggman, and on this channel we talk about crowdfunding. And in this video, I really want to focus this content for the musicians out there in the audience. So if you're trying to raise money for a new album, you're trying to raise money for a band, you're trying to raise money to really just level up your game as a musician, I want to talk about how you can use crowdfunding in order to do this. Not only to obviously raise funds, but also to coalesce a fan base so you can accelerate as well, getting the word out there about your music and about your craft. Now, I will be the first one to say that I have a little bit of a controversial stance on this, okay? So other people out there, I'm gonna say something that's a little bit controversial. I think that making music is about far more than just the artwork, okay? It's about far more than just the artwork. So today, I kind of wanna get into why that's the case and the business of music crowdfunding, why you have to understand the marketing piece. And one of the things I love to do on this channel, not only obviously giving teachings and sharing advice with my books and my course and all the programs and that kind of stuff, but I also love to bring on mentors. I love to bring on experts. I obviously do the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast as well. And today I'm bringing on the preeminent expert when it comes to music crowdfunding. And he is going to share with you some nuggets of gold when it comes to this, so that you should listen up if you want to raise money, specifically in the $10,000 to $65,000 range. That's the sweet spot that we'll be talking about on today's video, and it's coming up right after this. Okay, so again, my name is Salvador Briggman, and I've been in the crowdfunding industry since 2012 with my blog, crowdcrux.com. We also have the podcast, Crowdfunding Demystified. We got this YouTube channel, we got books, we got coaching, we got help people when it comes to launching projects, all that kind of stuff. But one of the areas that I feel like has kind of been a little bit underserved is musicians, bands, people that are actually putting out and creating work that other people can listen to, they can enjoy, they can, experience life in a different way. And to me, this is kind of actually like a hidden gem, right? When it comes to crowdfunding, because music is so incredibly important. However, in this video, I talk a lot in my channel about creating products and selling products and marketing in more of a general sense. But today I actually wanted to bring on a mentor, an expert when it comes to music crowdfunding. Now, when you're kind of getting started as a musician, I think it's very easy to think like it's all about the craft. But to be honest, and I'm going to say again something a little bit controversial, I don't think it is. I think that in order to be successful as a musician, you have to understand the business of the music industry. You have to understand how to market. Why do certain artists get promoted? Why do certain songs take off, right? Why is it that certain musicians are not struggling to get by at all and they're living the life, and other ones are just kind of scraping pennies together in order to be able to fuel their creative work? And eventually you're just going to burn out if you don't understand the mechanics that go behind being successful, whether that's with raising money, whether that's with selling albums, or even getting attention online. The only way to succeed in business is to surround yourself with the right people. Business is a team sport. It's not an individual sport, right? When you're playing a banjo, right? You're playing a guitar, you're playing the saxophone, you can maybe enjoy, playing solo if you're doing that kind of thing. But really great music also is kind of more of in a team sport, in a band kind of a setting. So even if you're doing vocals, right, you're probably pairing that with music as well. And business is the exact same way. It's all about the people that you're working with, and more specifically, the mentors you have access to. Today's mentor that I brought on the show has done incredible things when it comes to music crowdfunding. He's had successes like this. He's had great testimonials like this, and incredibly phenomenal people that he's helped with campaigns just like this. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Ian Anderson and a clip from a much longer, in-depth podcast episode that I did with him, sharing and revealing some of the secrets that go into a successful music crowdfunding campaign.
So for the people in the audience who are listening and sort of want one or two tips here as to what they should be focusing on in the pre-launch phase, what would you say to them, particularly the artists?
Well, I will say two things. There are two big things to focus on in the pre-launch phase. One is to keep in mind that the best way to capitalize on crowdfunding is to make your campaign more about why you do what you do, your inner purpose and mission, and then to layer what the next thing is you're going to do on top of that. So what do I mean by that? Most people who are doing a campaign, particularly musicians, will want to start out right away and say, Hey, Sal, don't know if you've heard about my campaign. I am making a CD and it is going to be awesome. You should see this amazing studio I'm going to be recording in Nashville or down in Austin or LA. I can't wait. My guest musicians are crazy good. And I got this wicked producer who used to work with LL Cool J back in the 80s. And anyway, you get the drift. They'll go on and on and on about the bullet points of this project that they want to record. And you're sitting there and you're like, okay, most of that stuff doesn't really make a difference to me, but I have a relationship with you. I value what you do as an artist. What's going to be the outcome on that level? You know, you might not think that, but it's in your subconscious. So instead of starting out with everything about what you're doing in your campaign, you back up a few steps and you start to talk about your whole purpose, which would sound a little bit more like, hey, Sal, it's Ian. Haven't caught up, since college, but I just wanted to let you know that after I graduated, I got into music. I started this band. It is the most important thing I've ever done with my life. The music that I make deals with this emotional subject or that emotional subject, and I have really connected with people in a meaningful way over this. I've decided to take a big risk and put myself out there trying to take this career to the next level. And that's what this campaign is about.
You know what's actually so interesting about that is the first example that you gave just kind of engaged like the logic side of my mind. And it sounded like you were trying to get me to do something. Like it sounded like you were almost promoting to me. The second one more so engaged the emotional part. Like I feel like I know you. That is some way that like a friend would talk to me. That's not some way that a marketer would talk to me. It kind of made me be like, like what's happening in this guy's life?
Absolutely. And you nailed it. And that picks up on the second tip that I was going to give. And that is know your audience. If you go out and Google crowdfunding tips and tricks, almost, any 5 or 7 or 10-point bullet list of the top 10 things to do when you're crowdfunding, one of them is going to say something along the lines of, know your audience / build an audience / build your tribe, right? And all they mean is engage people. But let's take it a step back. Do they really mean engage any random people? I mean, probably not, right? Who would you rather engage when you were trying to develop a relationship around your art? Just a boatload of random people or people who have demonstrated interest in what you're doing? And those people, you know who they are. They're your fans that you do have, or if you're just getting started, they're your friends and your family, and they're the people around you within an arm's length that you can literally reach out and touch and have a conversation with. So when you understand who you should be taking your campaign to, which is people you know, if you take your campaign to a bunch of people you don't know, well, conversion rates in the marketing industry, a lot of people are happy with like 0.5% of cold conversion, right? You'd have to reach a whole boatload of people to turn that into any substantial amount of crowdfunding support. And you'd probably spend more reaching them than you would make on the campaign. But when it comes to the people you know, which are your current fans, your current customers, that's where any business who knows what they're doing would start anytime they launched, right? They go right to their customer list when they're trying to proof that stuff out. So you start with your fans, your friends, your family.
The other thing I just want to preface here for the listeners, this is also specifically, I would say, for a music type campaign, because product campaigns obviously will do paid advertising. But I think that's a really, really salient point. I also do want to dig a little bit more into that. But the other thing I just want to quickly mention before I forget is we tend to also, when we pitch someone or we mention something that we're doing, we get super nerdy and technical. Like we think that everyone has the knowledge about these different bands and artists, and like everyone is as knowledgeable as we are about musicians. And that's not simply the case. But what people are always drawn into, at least from my experience, is story. And to give you an example here, the people listening to this podcast, you might have never wanted to watch a 2-hour long video on computer programming, unless you're really into computer programming. But everyone is willing to watch The Social Network, which is about this whole website and programming and all these different things because of the story element behind that. And that's another thing that really just stood out to me with the second pitch. It made it seem like more like a story.
Absolutely. That's the first area you want to focus on, connecting with people. And so, yeah, just to add on to your point, absolutely, I'm talking about creative genres like music and like writing. You know, it works the same way whether you have fans or you don't, but where you're at in your career will probably influence the extent to which you have a fan base. And the bigger your fan base is, probably the less you will need to lean on family and close friends. But there are those family and close friends when you're a creative person that will always want to support you. And you need to honor those relationships by letting people know when you're doing something in your life that is a big deal and contributes to your overall mission and purpose in being here. So always good to keep in mind, because a lot of people are scared to go talk to friends and family. They feel like they are sabotaging the relationship by asking for money. Mm-hmm. You're not asking for money. You're letting them know what you're up to, and the fact that what you're up to is a huge deal in your life. If they want to support that, fantastic. To any extent they want to, whether it's $1 or $1,000. And if they just want to say, good job, I'll keep rooting for you, then that's fine too. You're not saying, hey man, can you float me a 50 spot? That's a recipe for resentment, right?
Yeah, so totally. That's going to be an awkward Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you have to lead with opportunity and abundance and have care for both what you're doing and for the person you're talking to.
Okay, man. So obviously this information is golden. And I think that when you're trying to do something new or you're trying to be successful, really at the end of the day, you're only as good as the information that you have access to. So when it comes to music crowdfunding, I think that one of the kind of more difficult things is that a lot of musicians, a lot of artists, a lot of bands don't want to figure this out themselves, right? They don't want to have to go through all of the mistakes, all of the trial and error, spend months and months of their life just on this fundraising thing, right? They don't want to have to become a guru when it comes to fundraising. They don't want to become an expert when it comes to crowdfunding. They just want to know what works, employ that system that's designed to get a result, and get the result, right? To get it as quickly as possible. So that's why I really admire the work that Ian Anderson is doing. And I have an announcement at the end of this video, actually a collaboration, which I'm lucky enough to be able to work with this guy and share with you. But that being said, definitely want to listen to the next segment of the video, because we'll be sharing some more secrets when it comes to music crowdfunding. If you do like this, give me a thumbs up and stay tuned for the next section. Want to take all the stress out of fulfilling your Kickstarter rewards? Fulfillrite is the turnkey solution that puts product delivery on autopilot. The Top Campaigns uses trusted high-tech provider to store, package, and ship their products. Focus on growing your business. Leave shipping to the experts. Don't wait. Get a custom quote from Fulfillrite today. Link in the description.
Where should I be in my campaign? I've launched. I'm halfway through my campaign and I've only raised 20% of my funds. A lot of people think that's a problem. They think I'm halfway through my campaign, I should have half of the funds. Not necessarily true. A lot of people raise 50 to 75% of their total funding in the last 3 days. The last 3 days, and you've probably observed this too, is always a flurry of activity. If you can, if during the front part and middle part of your campaign, if you can get in spitting distance, if you're 30 or 40% of the way, you're golden. You're going to have to work it. You're going to have to make contact with people, but you can probably do it. It is so incredibly rare, particularly in these creative genres, for a campaign to get above 70% and not fund. Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point too, that at the last, few days, there's just such urgency there where people who were on the fence or people who weren't paying attention in your life for whatever reason, we all lead very busy lives, then are like, oh man, I have to pledge because this thing is going to close. So they get in their pledge then. Also, part of the reason why I think people or some people have that need to get to like a 50% level so soon is I just stress that a lot in everything that I put out. And it's kind of to put urgency under people as well to make sure that they're thinking about this at least. What is another memorable campaign that you have helped, or one or two others that you could share with the listeners?
Yeah, well, I write about this in the book a little bit. She was one of the first people I ever reached out to in 2012 while we were researching 100 Kickstarters. And she was probably one of the first 7 artists that I ever talked to. And, I suppose I sent her a message midway through her campaign. She was trying to raise $18,000, I think. Her name was Neva. And this is again in the first chapter of the book, so I'm spoiling it a little bit, but it's not a big deal. She was at $3,000 or so. By the time she messaged me back, it was 3 days from the end of her campaign, and she was at like 5,000 and going for 18,000. And she's like, "What should I do?" And I write her back, and I said, I'm not really an expert yet. I just started researching this, but near as I can tell, you should probably start getting a hold of people." And, she pretty much did, and made about $12,000, which was around 2/3 of her campaign, I think, in the last 3 to 4 days of her campaign, and hit her goal. And I was just astounded. I think she had enough of a fan base to make that happen. Not everybody's just going to go raise $18,000. So clearly she had enough people to pull from to make that happen. But I think she had just a little bit of maybe a messaging problem, and just was relying too much on social media and not enough on personal contact. Because you and I both know, and probably everybody listening does too, how easy it is to not see something in a Facebook feed, or even if we do see it, to not take action because we're totally anonymous behind our screen. But if Sal calls Ian and says, "Hey man, here's this thing, it's a really big deal," and Ian listens, well, that's a lot different story with a lot different probability of the person backing you. So
it's far more personal, definitely, I would say. And that is remarkable that she was able to do that. That also just underlies the fact that many of us, when we're doing a campaign or any kind of launch, we tend to sort of limit our own thinking or limit what's possible. And if we actually max out, our network, we max out really trying hard, putting 100% into the campaign, it's amazing what you can actually do. So that's a really cool story. I didn't mean to cut you off there if you were sharing another one.
Just one more. I worked with this guy in 2013. It was about a year after we had started, and we'd put together the 6-step launch process that I present in an artist guide to crowdfunding domination, and also that is the backbone of my online materials. And so we had these 6 steps in place, and we were pretty sure that they were right, but we were getting people to work with just for free to try and proof it out, proof out the concept. And this fella from New York City, Jay Stolar, got a hold of us. And man, when you just launched a website in the last year and you throw it out there, "Hey, we'd love to work with some people," you don't know who you're going to get through the door, right? I mean, it could be anybody. But of course, you still talk to him, and we talked to him. And he had about 2,000 people on his mailing list, and he had an ambitious plan. He wanted to raise $25,000 for his first solo album. He had some experience in the New York music scene. He'd had a band that had raised about $8,000. So 4 people in the band had pooled their resources and raised $8,000 through their first crowdfunding campaign. Jay wanted to blow this out of the water, and we were like, yeah, I don't know how that's going to go, but you do have 2,000 people on a mailing list, and you seem like an enthusiastic guy. And he was enthusiastic and engaging as all get out. And he's like, "Yep, feed me." So we jumped into it, designed his campaign. He was a very willing student and also very able. He soaked it all in and put out. And this is what I'm amazed at. One of the things in hindsight is that this guy walked through the door and was like our perfect candidate. I totally scored that way, that he wasn't just some crack job trying to make a little money.
Yeah.
So he gets out, does it. We're like, dude, 25,000 might be a bit of a reach. We think you might be able to get there, but let's set your goal at 15. So he did. We used our preload technique and, our campaign stuff. That's just a way that you launch your campaign, specifically reaching out to people. And he hit his goal amount in 3 days. He raised $15,000 in 3 days.
That is awesome.
Yeah, we were totally stoked. And then he went on a trip to Mexico, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend that people plan a Mexico vacation in the middle of their crowdfunding
Not the
campaign.
Not the best idea.
Because you probably should be reaching out to people. But he had done that, and it was all in the works, and we went through it. He came back, and we kept working, and by about the last week, I think we were up to 20 grand or so. He was very willing to talk to people personally. And in that last week, which is when your backers start coming out of the woodwork, and that's because of scarcity. I don't know if you've read Dr. Cialdini's book,
Influence,
The Psychology of Persuasion, Influence.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. I'm looking for it on my bookshelf.
And I love that book. Yeah.
The Psychology of Influence, is that what it's called?
I think it's Influence, and then he recently wrote a book called Persuasion, which is really fascinating if you haven't had a chance to read that.
Oh, I should read that. Yeah, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. That's probably it. Mm-hmm. This is Dr. Robert Cialdini. He's a psychologist. People, if you're listening, you should pick up this book because he lays out...
Complete game changer.
It really is, and it lays out the 6 biggest persuasive reasons there are. He doesn't call them techniques. They're things that persuade, and he leaves it at that. Scarcity is one of the biggest ones, and there's nothing that brings scarcity about like a countdown timer and the possibility that what you want might shut off and not be available. So that's why people really start to take action in the last week. Long story short, he got from $25,000 to $40,000 kind of in what we call end sequence stages. And 2 days before the campaign was done, he was at $40,000. And we were all blown away because he'd made 15 grand in the first 3 days. It was for his first release as a solo artist. He'd blown past his real goal, was $25,000. He'd already beat that. He's at $40,000. And we are like, dude, we're looking at each other. We're looking at each other around the table, and we're like, we have just maxed out. I mean, we should just shut this off right now. And Jay's like, what do you think? Should I set another stretch goal? Should I go for more? And we all kind of hem and haw. And well, finally we're like, well, do you have something you could spend the money on in your budget if you did go for more? And he did. I think he did an international tour or something. In the last day or day and a half, he raised another $10,000. Broke the $50,000 mark for his very first release. It was just exceptional, phenomenal. It goes to show that if you're willing to reach out to people, and he really put his heart out there. I mean, there was nothing cheesy about it at all. It was his heart, and he was willing to do the work, and he had a plan. He had a good plan. He had a budget for what he would do with the amounts of money he was raising, and man, did people respond. It was just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
That's incredible. And what's even more impressive is he did this and also took a trip to Mexico.
Yeah. Again, wouldn't recommend that. Well, it worked out for Jay, so what can you say?
Okay, so at this point in time, you know that Ian knows what he's talking about, man. This guy has been around the block. He knows the ins and outs. And just like myself, he loves and is passionate about the crowdfunding industry. So I've been lucky enough to do a collaboration with Ian. So for those that are out there that are musicians, honestly, my hat's off to you because you can do something that I can't do when it comes to being able to play musical instruments, being able to use your vocals. I think it's a tremendous creative talent to be able to do that. And every single musician or artist that I've come across is actually a really smart smart person. However, when it comes to doing something new, like marketing, like fundraising, like understanding how to build a business that sort of is around their passion, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So I think that one of the things that's been my mission with this channel is to simplify things, to demystify things, to make it really easy, almost a step-by-step fashion for you to follow a path and to get a result. So first of all, I have two free announcements I'm gonna share with you, and then I'm gonna share with you one other mega announcement. So the first is that if you wanna learn more about how to actually create a pitch video when it comes to your crowdfunding campaign, Ian has a really great article, in-depth blog post, which you can check out down below, kind of sharing just a couple of tidbits when it comes to creating that pitch video, which I think a lot of musicians really struggle with. In addition, we have partnered on a free music crowdfunding course, man. So this is basically to get you up and running when it comes to learning how to actually do one of these campaigns. It's kind of more paced out for you, so that way you can follow step-by-step fashions to actually how to do one of these on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or one of the major crowdfunding websites. I'd say this is a great course for beginners. It is free. All you gotta do is go to the link down below, enter your name and email, and we'll start sending you some videos to get you up to speed. Now, the last announcement is mega, right? This is really for those people that are serious about this and you're actually trying to turn this into a business, but you're also very serious about your career. You're kind of had frustration, maybe a little bit with how to get started with this, and you're finally ready to actually take real action towards your goals. If that sounds like you, and you're also looking to raise money in between the $10,000 to the $65,000 range, we can help you with a new guide that's a great investment that's called the Artist Guide to Crowdfunding Domination. So this is not for the faint of heart. Again, this is for the action takers. This is for you if you're trying to raise between $10,000 and $65,000 on a major crowdfunding site like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I think it will also apply for some of those smaller creators if you want just a way to do it faster, to raise 5K, 8K, and you want to get that done like that, and you want some more strategy behind that. You don't want to waste your time. You want to discover all the tactics that actually go into that. I think it's going to help you as well. But I really do think that this pays off for people as well who wants to kind of raise money in the 10K, 25K, 50K range, because at that point in time, why are you not investing in your tools? At that point in time, you're really making this about much more than just raising money for a new album or a new CD or a new gig that you're trying to play. You're really kind of baking this almost into your career, and that way you can attract a fan base, you can get people talking on social media, and you can make this to be a much bigger thing. So I'm happy to announce that this guide is available on launchandrelease.com. This is an investment. However, I think it's honestly one of the best investments possible. And I would even go so far as to say that this is a better fit for musicians and artists and bands than my book, even the Kickstarter Launch Formula, right? The Kickstarter Launch Formula, I think, is probably the best book out there when it comes to launching a product, when it comes to raising money for even theater projects, film projects, many different types and styles of campaigns, tabletops, board games, etc. The Kickstarter Launch Formula works wonders, and that's my book that's available on Audible and Amazon. But really, if you are in this niche of you're being a musician, you're being an artist, and you want to raise money, we have a really great guide for you available, again, at launchandrelease.com, the Artist Guide to Crowdfunding Domination. And I think you'll be blown away by some of the things that you're going to learn in that guide. Hope you enjoyed this video. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Come subscribe to this content to get more videos just like this, and hopefully you also leave a positive comment down below. I hope that this was useful and educational, and I will see you next time.